LinkedIn is pretty great at a lot of things, like helping you tap into the latest trends and insights in your field. We cannot stop your coworker from tapping her pencil. LinkedIn can help you find new jobs that align with your career goals. We cannot help you find the source of that weird smell in the office fridge. Ew. And while we can't stop your coworkers from bringing their hobbies into the office, LinkedIn can help you bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, March 16th, 2026. On the show today, news, including reopening dates, a new survey on annual pass holders in Zootopia, and listener questions. Then in our main segment, Jim continues the history of the Great Movie Ride. Let's get started by bringing in the man who points out that the word hyphenated doesn't have a hyphen, but the word non-hyphenated does. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len. I genuinely feel bad for anybody who's learning English as a second language because there is no rhyme or reason to English. I mean, think about it. There's the classics. You drive on a parkway, but you park in your driveway. Yep. When you send a package, by car, it's a shipment. But when you put that very same package in a ship, it's now cargo. And don't even get me started about, where's the egg and eggplant or where's the apple and pineapple? One of
the joys of studying English is that you also get to study at least 3 other languages for their idiomatic consistency as well. Yeah, that's always good.
All true. All
right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes over to patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Chris Wilkins, Don Sullivan, Greg Dykes, NJ Family Dad, Carolyn Hughes, and Cheryl Figlin Brenner. Jim, this is the team about to do annual maintenance on Newt Scamander's suitcase for Epic Universe's Circus Arcanu show. The project has been delayed for months while legal determined if inside the suitcase is a job site or a work trip that requires a per diem allowance. Once the HR complaint about a really judgmental demiguise commenting on craftsmanship is resolved, the actual repairs should go quickly. True story.
That is such an amazing deep cut in the Wizarding World. I mean, I applaud it. There we go.
Did I watch a 15-minute video for a 1-paragraph section in the show notes? Of course I did. That's the way this thing works.
Okay.
All right, Jim, on to the news. Disney World just announced a ton of new and refreshed attractions opening in a couple of months. And our friends at unlockedmagic.com have discounted theme park tickets starting at just 1 day of admission at prices better than Disney's. So get your theme park tickets at unlockedmagic.com now. See all the new stuff at Walt Disney World soon. All right. Jim, that reopening news is this. Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin reopens April 8th. Big Thunder Mountain reopens early May with previously speculated Memorial Day, so that's sooner. Bluey's Wild World opens at Conservation Station in the Animal Kingdom on May 26th. Also May 26th, Soarin' Across America at Epcot. And over in Hollywood Studios, Disney's website's now listing details like a 20-minute runtime for the soon-to-be-reopened Disney Junior show at Disney's Hollywood Studios. So that and the Magic of Disney Animation are both scheduled to reopen some point later this summer. Jim, a lot of reopening news today.
Yeah, and again, kind of intriguing that it's all seems to be front loaded to give people a reason to come to the parks this summer.
Yeah, I think so. I think what Disney's trying to do here is capture some of those people who do not yet have firm summer vacation plans. Mm-hmm. Dropping all of these things at once might give people enough reason to get up off the couch and head to Orlando this summer. That's what I'm thinking here. What do you think?
That certainly makes sense, but looking ahead to the show notes here, there's also something that Disney's walking out that in theory gets people on planes that head to Orlando this fall or thereabouts, right?
Right. So the other interesting announcement that came out of Disney today was a new Walt Disney World discount that included free dining and also a 4-day, 4-park magic ticket. So remember, these new attractions start reopening early April and most of them are opened by Memorial Day. We think Rock and Roller Coaster might also be somewhere around there. That's yet TBD. So like, basically we've got April, May, first part of June available for these new attractions by themselves to draw people into the parks. But once those things reopen, Disney needs something to get those people who couldn't make it during, April, May, and June. And so this free dining plan runs basically the end of June, June 28th through October 3rd. So July, August, and September, plus also the second half of October through Halloween, and then the first couple of weeks of December. So which is, that October time is typically slow. The first couple of weeks of December also typically slow. The back half of the summer, so like July and August, also, fairly slow. So I think, Jim, Disney's counting here on the attraction reopenings to bring people in through at least the end of June. And then these discounts to carry them through late summer into fall. And really Disney's looking forward here, like, 1, 2, maybe 3 financial quarters ahead, right?
Okay, no, certainly makes sense. And, but just sort of peeking over the horizon, 2027, we do have 1 or 2 of the new projects coming online then, right?
Yeah, I'd expect Tropical Americas to open 2027. Disney hasn't given us a date other than 2027. My sense is that's going to be the second half of the year rather than the first half of the year. So we may see, other things happening in the first half of the year to get people, in for summer and stuff like that. The other interesting thing was this this new 4-day 4-park magic ticket from $109 per day starts May 26th, which is Memorial Day week, and runs through the end of September. So that basically covers all of summer.
Yeah, I guess for me they're just I'm kind of intrigued by Josh, new CEO of the company, coming out of parks. I can't help but look at this schedule and think, Josh wants a really good year in the parks for his first year as CEO. Just
right. Yeah.
So do what you can to make that happen.
Yeah, I think these reopenings being announced all at once is sort of like trying to make a big PR splash to get people to book. It'll be in the news, it'll be on social media for a couple of days. They still need something for the second half of the year, and they need something for the first half of 2027. But that's ages away in Wall Street time, Jim. We've got plenty of time for that, so no worries there.
All true. All true.
All right, Jim, over at Universal. Universal Studios Hollywood has begun ride cycling its Fast and Furious Hollywood Drift attraction in California. And Jim, this is the roller coaster with the automobile-themed ride vehicles that spin in corners to simulate a car drifting like in the movies. We've put a video preview of this in the show notes. I got to say, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, in fact, Drew Taylor, my co-host on Fine Tuning, wearing his rap hat, actually went over and did the press preview last week and was talking about how impressive the cars were up close and in person, but at the same time to watch them, go out and dance on the track was equally impressive. So.
Yeah, Drew shared with me that he was able to acquire one of the Vin Diesel scented automobile car air fresheners. So that was really nice. A nice little. That's a joke, by the way. They don't really have this, but they should. But Jim, this is supposed to be the coaster that we're getting in Orlando too, right?
Of sorts. I mean, the drifting of the vehicles. There will be a different ride path because remember, this is largely built on the footprint of the old Rip Ride Rocket, but with some enhancements. I mean, it's still going to be a pretty spectacular thing you see as you walk up to the park, though, because it's still going to do what it did previously, sort of walk outside of the footprint of the park and then loop back in.
Right, that's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. The shape of the track's gonna be different in Orlando, but the basic ride vehicle technology should be similar, right?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a hoot. Also, Jim, last little bit of industry news. Disney's named Thomas Mazloum as chairman of Disney Experiences, replacing Josh D'Amaro, who's now CEO. Mazloum's 58 years old and has been with Disney for more than 25 years. He was previously president of Disneyland. And because he was promoted, his old role now needs to be filled, and that set off a cascade of other appointments. So the president of Disneyland is now Jill Estorino, who was previously the president of Disney Parks International. So with that role open, that is now being filled by Tasia Filipatos. And she comes from Consumer Products, which opens up something at Consumer Products. And that's going to be handled now by Lisa Baldziski as president of Disney Consumer Products. So, Jim, when a big high-profile move like this is made, it sets off a waterfall of events. It looks like Disney has now filled in all of those. What do you make of this?
It's kind of interesting, at least to me, to watch sort of the Disney equivalent of musical chairs. Right. Old hands from other divisions moving into new roles. But at the same time, you have to assume that Josh, having been at the company as long as he has, is looking for good, experienced people again to give him, that first year of just success and calmness and, just trying to be the anti-Chapek, I think is what we're trying to say here, Len. So.
Fair, yeah. Okay. I was a little surprised by Thomas Mazloum being named chairman of Disney Experiences. And the reason is this, it's basically he's 58 years old. Mm-hmm. We expect, Josh D'Amaro to be CEO for at least 10 years, which would place Mazloum at 68 years old, 10 years from now. I don't think the board would ever consider a 68-year-old as the next CEO of the company.
Oh, no.
And so that's why I was a little bit surprised that this role, chairman of Disney Experiences, is not being considered or likely the stepping stone to the next CEO.
Yeah.
But Mazloum has experience, right? You mentioned this.
Yeah, well, more to the point, if you cold-bloodedly look what's on Disney's dance card over the next 5 to 10 years, I mean, there's at least one new park that we know about, Dubai, and another, rumored. And just the notion of, having an old practice hand on that side of, parks, products, and experiences during that time certainly makes sense. You want a guy who knows how to do this when you start walking out these things, especially overseas.
Right. And then Josh is intimately familiar with working with Mazloum. So, it probably helps to have somebody in that role that you as, CEO can trust. So that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Fair. All right. Well, congratulations to Tom. Mm-hmm. All right, Jim, on to surveys. Mackenzie sent in a new Walt Disney World annual passholder survey with an interesting set of questions about Animal Kingdom. And these two particular questions caught my eye. They're asking Mackenzie how valuable a couple of Animal Kingdom things are for annual pass holders. And one is the Zootopia popsicle prop and Nick Wilde magic shot at the park. And the other is a carrot cake sundae dessert available at Animal Kingdom. And Jim, I mention these because there's a totally unsubstantiated theory that Disneyland might be looking at Zootopia as a replacement for Pandora, and that's based on a 1-year delay in the closure and demolition of Mike and Sully to the rescue. Again, it's a rumor. We don't think this is happening. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to speculate about it, so we're going to do that here. So, Jim, after that rumor came out, Disney said Pandora is still a go, and we've not heard anything different. But in talking to Jim Schul in Animal Kingdom earlier this month, we were standing out in front of the Zootopia Better Together attraction. It's worth noting a couple of things. One is Zootopia's box office numbers for the sequels are going up, but Avatars are going down. Mm-hmm. 2, Disney would have to pay licensing fees to James Cameron for Avatar, but not for Zootopia because they own it. Mm-hmm. And then the Shanghai Disneyland Zootopia Miniland fits within a couple of feet of the area available for Pandora at DCA. So again, we have no reason to believe this is happening, but it's an interesting speculation, right?
Absolutely. And another kind of interesting wrinkle on this is that the Zootopia Hot Pursuit attraction over in Shanghai, Len, it's the exact same technology as Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And, just one of those things that would be intriguing about bringing that to DCA is you wouldn't necessarily need to train your maintenance staff to fix, a different ride vehicle. They would already be familiar with, keeping Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway up and running. Whereas, it's the thing about the Avatar attraction, that's supposedly based on the boat system Also from Shanghai, the Sunken Treasure, the Pirates of the Caribbean thing.
Didn't know that. Okay.
And, all brand new tech coming to Anaheim, and would mean, having to teach everybody there, how to maintain that. So, it's interesting what potentially is in play here and the reasons they might be in play.
Yeah, I mean, long-term maintenance is a large expense for running any big attraction like that. So that could factor into the economics of the decision. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
All right, Jim, on to listener questions. Our friend Kent sent in this one. Have you heard anything about a Tiana's Bayou Adventure refurb? I'm asking because we're planning a trip for January of 2027, and it's an absolute must-do for someone in our party. I know it always needs some tender loving care, and between Magic Kingdom rides like Big Thunder Mountain and Buzz Lightyear having been refurbed recently, the time frame might be a good time to take it offline. So, Jim, I've not heard anything specific about Tiana's Bayou Adventure being refurbed. Did you?
No. I mean, okay. There is a continuing problem in regard to some of the, I mean, face it, the figures in there are, cutting edge, state of the art, and they, they've proved a challenge to keep up and running. And, so, but that's more of a get in there late at night, see what you can do. Kind of a thing. As for the attraction being down for days and weeks at a time, no, I haven't heard anything to that effect.
So I went back and looked at historical refurb data on Splash Mountain for January, and it looks like the ride was on a 3-year cycle in the past. So like 2015, there was a January refurb period. And then again in 2018, 2021, it was down for retheming. So Tiana's opened mid-2024, which puts January 2027 right around 2.5 years into the maintenance calendar. So Disney could go either way and do it early in 2027 or wait 3.5 years until January 2028. So, Ken, unfortunately, your odds are 50-50 right now, if I had to guess. Either way, the closure likely lasts 3 weeks, last 3 weeks of January. And for what it's worth, Disneyland's version also seems to be on the exact same schedule at the same year, too. I guess they're doing them both at the same time.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, Kent.
Yeah, so I was talking to Kent, and I'm like, in any given year, you have a 1 in 3 chance of the ride being closed. But because of the way this particular calendar falls, it's 50-50. And then I thought it was like that Monty Hall 3-door problem that Marilyn Voss Savant once spent 2 years of her life trying to explain to people. I'm like, we're not going to go into 33% versus 50% here. All right, anyway.
There we go.
On to this email from Sam, who says, we've got an upcoming trip to Disney's Boardwalk Inn with a resort view room. Are there any specific rooms or areas you'd recommend? And so for Sam, I went back and looked at Touring Plans Hotel Room Finder. There are a couple of really interesting ones that are resort view rooms, but actually view other things. So as an example, room 3214, and there's a link in the show notes, looks out at the quiet pool and has a really good view of that. Also, even numbered rooms 2330 to 2336 also view the pool. But then rooms 52, 72, 74, and 76 likely have Epcot fireworks views based on the photos that we've got of those. So that's interesting because you can book a resort view room here at the Boardwalk Inn, but also get either a pool or fireworks views, depending on what room you're interested in asking for. So little tip there for Sam.
No, I would go with the fireworks view room. That would be great.
Yeah, it looks really good. Also, Jim, an email from Rick who said, following up on your story about former presidential candidate Bob Dole meeting characters at Universal, Rick found the photo of that event in a book titled Don't Tell the President by Gene Becker and Tom Collimore, and I've included the photo in the show notes. Jim, it's Woody Woodpecker, Charlie Chaplin, Frankenstein, and Bob Dole in a construction field with a large cement wall behind them.
Well, if I remember correctly, the quote from the book is, and Dole was enough of a pro that when he got off and, and stood with that group, he introduced them as his new cabinet. Was that the joke?
Dole had a sense of humor. I'll give him that. He was funny.
There we go.
Jim, I think now it's mandatory that media outlets like the Washington Post and the New York Times now not only interview people in diners in Iowa, but also theme park goers in Central Florida, especially in the venue of character greetings, to ask them about presidential candidate views.
Absolutely. You really want Chili Willy's opinion on things like this.
Exactly. Also, our friend Barb sent in an email that says, I just left Universal Orlando on Sunday. I love the lack of pre-shows. I walked in to so many coasters. I can't stand Guardians because of the pre-shows. This should be a topic for you and Jim. And I agree. I think this should be a topic for the gyms. And for those of you who are listening, the gyms are beauties, eh? Anyway, I checked a couple of journal articles on this, and it seems to be that most people prefer pre-shows because it makes them feel like the entertainment has already started. So in an article titled The Psychology of Waiting in Lines, David H. Meister calls this occupied time, and that it feels shorter than unoccupied time, where you're just standing around. So yeah, Jim, we should talk to Shul about why you put a pre-show in an attraction, right?
Yeah, and in fact, if we want to bury the needle even further here, I mean, remember, late 90s, we had the concept of not just pre-show, but we had the scene ones. And
right, going into the early 2000s, right?
Yeah, and you think about how elaborate Disney got with those. I mean, think about how they redid the entire exterior queue of the Haunted Mansion, or that, what they did with Peter Pan, she's not wrong about the Guardians of the Galaxy pre-show. They just seem to go on for days.
Yeah, I think they've got what you would consider multiple pre-show rooms. One is, I think, is fine, but to Barb's point, when you start getting multiple pre-shows, then it starts to feel like the delaying tactic it is, right?
It just it's a little it's a great ride, but it's still a little naked. That we're stalling you for these 2 hours. Enjoy.
Exactly. All right, an email from Michael who says, a couple weeks ago, you and Jim were talking about how the e-tickets they build in the Magic Kingdom expansions need to be love, not like. Was then that supposed to be Rise of the Resistance? What did they do differently this time? Is throwing more money at it or thinking about it harder really a guarantee of a better result? What else are they going to do differently that they think will make the next beloved attraction? And Michael, I think the discussion here around, redoing the stuff for Villains Land was mainly around premature value engineering being the root of all evil. So in computer science, there's this saying that premature optimization is the root of all evil. And this one, I think, was value engineering. Like basically the Imagineers were thinking, let's keep costs under control, even in the blue sky phase of things. And then management pointed out that that is not the appropriate time to do that particular thing. So,
and I guess with, and this is the weird situation that Imagineering finds itself in, in the Josh D'Amaro era. That, I mean, face it, the Imagineers spent a year developing Star Wars Land, but, initially it was, Tatooine, and, you were going to go to the cantina in Mos Eisley. And it was, as the story goes, it was Kathleen Kennedy herself who supposedly went to Bob Iger and said, that's great for the 40 and 50-year-old Star Wars fans who loved the first film. But, and Kathleen had data in hand at that point about how affection was rising, for example, for the prequels. The notion of those kids were now becoming adults, and those were the Star Wars movies that they saw as a kid, and that's the stuff they wanted to see in the park. Yeah,
because you and I saw this, some of this data, right? And one of them was like millennials really like the prequels.
They do.
But to base an entire land off of that was just bizarre to me. Okay.
All right. Sure. But Kathleen, pointed out that, look, if you want the smartest long-term investment, this land should be based on Rey and Kylo Ren and Poe. Yeah. And
it kind of made sense at the time. I don't think either of us were on board, but you could kind of see the rationale there.
You could.
Yeah, fair. Yeah. Interesting. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim continues the history of the Great Movie Ride. We'll be right back.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number, 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number, save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
And we're back. All right, Jim, this is part 4 of our Great Movie Ride series. Where do we leave off?
Well, this time around, folks, we're going to share what folks who actually worked on the ride, cast members who were part of the attraction are going to talk about. And remember, Great Movie Ride opened May of '89. And what was fun about MGM's Thesis attraction is it gave cast members who were craving a little time in the spotlight and a new place to shine. And prior to that, prior to the Great Movie Ride opening, those folks, were kind of confined to the Jungle Cruise. Right. But it's also important to point out here that the cast members who used to work inside of the Chinese theater and those who still today sail around Adventureland, while they're hugely entertaining, they don't work for the entertainment department at Walt Disney World. They are just hourly employees who work for attractions. Sure. But at the same time, not just anyone could work at the Great Movie Ride. As a cast member, you had to audition for this gig. You were given script pages or sides in actors' parlance, and you then had to read this material for the folks at casting, and they were the ones who ultimately decided if you had the chops, and that you could then be trained to be a tour guide at the Great Movie Ride.
So you had an audition?
You had to audition. You had to have a good speaking voice and a good, strong stage presence. And if you were lucky enough to get the gig, you then joined a very big team. In fact, this may be one of the reasons the Great Movie Ride got shut down in August of 2017, Len. In order to keep this 95,000 square foot attraction running on a day-to-day basis, Len, there were upwards of 30 cast members inside there rotating between the different positions, the greeter, the loader, you get the idea. And by the way, just want to stress here, not everyone got to play the gangster from the 30s or the bank robber.
Really?
Yep, that's a job you had to earn over time.
Oh, just like the regular mob, allegedly.
All right. Well, but
I mean, you don't walk in as the head of the Corleone family. You've got to work your way up.
There
right?
you go. There you go. Yeah, leave the gun, take the cannolis. All right.
Exactly.
Anyway, okay. Job one was learn how to operate that theater car, which, by the way, typically held 68 to 70 guests. Trickier than it looked, Len. The thing had 4 speeds. More to the point, depending on where you were, whether you were in the front theater car or the rear theater car, there was a choreography that each car had to follow if the cast member was going to deliver that 22-minute long experience that the Imagineers had envisioned for the Great Movie Ride.
Can you imagine having to memorize a 22-minute script?
Oof.
And do one take of it?
No. It's one of these things where I'm that much more impressed. The more I learned about what it took to operate the, like, for example, all right, you're the cast member driving car A.
Sorry, Jim. Real quick before you get into this, in the show notes, folks, I've pasted a map of the layout of the Great Movie Ride scene so that you can follow along as Jim's talking here. So go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. All right. So again, you're the cast member driving car A. You and the B car and the cast member driving the B car depart the load station as a pair. And by the way, on especially busy days at Disney MGM, at any one time, there'd be 5 pairs of traveling theater cars moving along this just over 1,900 foot long ride track through the show building.
Okay, so 5 pairs of cars, 10 cars, roughly 70 people per car, 700 people at any given time. going through the show building.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
astounding. Wow. Okay. All right.
All right. So first, cars A and B, they cruise down Music Street. That's the room, sort of the first show scene you see where you get your Busby Berkeley girls, your Gene Kelly animatronic, Bert and Mary Poppins. Okay. Now, coming out of Music Street, the cast member driving car A has to change gears. They got to put on some speed because they need to put some distance between their traveling car and car B, because car A needs to pass through the gangster sequence and then get into the Old West scene before car B gets in the gangster scene.
So car A got the Western scene, car B got the gangster scene. Is there any other Disney World attraction that was like this, where every other car got a different?
I'm trying to think of that, you know, because again, remember, this was something that the Imagineers desperately wanted, rewritability. You know, the notion was all right, we saw the gangster scene. I didn't see the Western scene. We need to get back in line for this.
I guess Space Mountain, left and right in Walt Disney World would be.
Yeah, but, you know, that's the interesting thing. Is it enough of a change between the left and the right track to really feel like, well, I got to go back?
Yeah, this is like you see completely different characters. Okay, valid. This might be unique. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
All right. So why was that separation important?
Well, where this got interesting is that, of course, in both the gangster scene and the bank robbery scene, your tour guide gets chased off, so to speak. The gangster and the bank robber commandeer the car, and then for the next few show scenes, the alien, the Indiana Jones Well of Soul scene, and finally to the Temple of Anubis, you have a brand new driver who's giving you a very different spiel. And you then get to the Temple of Anubis, and this is the part of the show where the gangster or the bank robber, you know, first stops the traveling car, runs up the steps. He makes a very big deal of he's going to steal that jewel, and then he gets zapped, and, you know, a cloud of NL2, you know, leaps up, and, you know, when it clears, you know, there's a burned up, you know, I always loved that figure because there was just enough left on the body that could be the gangster, could be the bank robber. You know, they're both holding a gun. They're both wearing a hat.
I love this scene. So I once did a ride through with my friend Matt Hochberg, who was able to get not only an entire car full of people at a, you know, like a meetup type thing, but we also knew the particular driver at the time. Okay. The robber, right? And so you know, we were talking smack, like everyone in the car was talking smack back to the cast member as we're going through the ride. Basically it was like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 version. Anyway, so we get to this scene, the robber says, "All right, you know, nobody here move while I go grab that jewel." And some like 8-year-old boy yells out, "Don't do it, Sam, don't do it." And he looks at the kid and goes, "Shut up, kid." Gets out of the ride vehicle and does his thing. Like, there's no way you could ever say "shut up, kid" to a guest in the ride. But because, you know, that particular setup, and that was like the funniest line, I think, that was delivered that entire ride. He just ad-libbed it. It was great. Oh, so fun. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so again, we get our zapped, you know, would-be jewel thief. The mysterious robed figure, you know, drops its robe. It's our original driver. But here's the thing. It's, you know, especially when it's the driver of car A, they have to, ta-da, it's me, run down, get in the car, and get moving, because car B is coming up behind.
Right.
And again, they have to have the exact same experience. More to the point, their driver has to come out and be able to do the reset. You know, in fact, they have to rotate the burned corpse out of sight and get it back to the neutral position before that new car shows up.
Can you imagine that in the job description? Rotate burned corpse.
It's just, for me, you know, the fact that, you know, this had to move as quickly and as smoothly as it did. And then once car B has done this, it's now the job of the cast member driving that theater car to really pick up the pace, because he needs to be right behind car A as that car is going into Munchkin Land. So, because the notion is that when it's time for the Wicked Witch, the S1000 figure to be revealed, both cars need to be in Munchkinland at that time. So you wouldn't think the Great Movie Ride was a stressful experience, but Len, it was. Oh, and additional fun side note here, Len, on especially hot days in Orlando. Cast members who worked at the Great Movie Ride as the gangster or the bank robber used to love this moment in the show, that blast of LN2. They got to stand at the top of the Temple of Anubis and disappear in this blast of sudden cold air, which made doing this job in May, June, and July down in Central Florida that much easier.
That sounds wonderful. All right. Anyway, back to the ride.
Anyway, back now to the B car. Again, once tour guide has regained control, again, got to move at speed. Got to get to where car A is, Sorcerer's Apprentice scene, because, again, the way the Imagineers designed this attraction, both theater cars had to be in Munchkinland so they could see the Wicked Witch. And then they cruise past Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion, and they're looking at the Emerald City. They enter that space where the cars then line up like it's a theater. They suddenly
side by side,
side by side, and they watch the movie montage. And once that's over, the traveling cars had to leave this space one at a time to head back to the offload area. And the guy driving car B has to wait his turn because they turn a little soon. They could, and this evidently happened once or twice. They actually rammed theater car A. Now, these things are big, heavy, industrial. In fact, they're basically the same technology as the Universe of Energy car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, only those carried 80 to 97 passengers versus the closer to 70. But these are traveling at 4 miles an hour, so it's not a high-speed collision.
Sure. Right.
But at the same time, it has happened, again, once or twice, and one particularly memorable collision happened, again, cast member is driving car B and is hustling to catch up to car A before they can enter the Munchkinland scene. And guy who's driving car B gets a little distracted, turns around, engaging with the guest in his car, and, is pointing out that, hey, we're coming up to the part of the ride that pays tribute to Walt Disney's Fantasia. And somehow didn't see car A idling there. So while he's turned around talking to the guests, he's saying something to the effect, now, here's someone I'm sure you all recognize. It's the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Bang! At this point, car B rear ends car A. And this cast member, still on a hype mic, immediately exclaims, Jesus Christ!
It's the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Jesus
Christ! There we go! I had no idea he had a name. So
I mean, there is a theological connection there I'm going with, right?
So, all right. And again, you don't want these things to happen. Because, God forbid, you have to offload people, and take them out one of the building's many emergency exits. And by the way, they were trained. There were a bunch of these lanes, and they in order to make it easier for these people to figure out where they would take people out of this 95,000 square foot building, they turned them into a poem. So it's like, exit point 2 is Chim Chim Chiroo. And exit point 4 is bullets galore, and then exit point 9 is bogeys behind, and so you get the idea that
that's fantastic.
Exit 2 is behind Bert and Mary and Bert, and the exit 4 is somewhere in the gangster scene, and again somewhere behind that plane in the Casablanca scene is exit 9. So, all right, again, so that's what it takes to be a driver of one of these traveling theater cars. And by the way, when you worked there and did an 8-hour shift, you'd rotate again through all of the positions, greeter, loader, tour guide. But, over the course of the day, you'd probably drive a tram 7 to 10 times through the building, unless, of course, you're a gangster or a bank robber. And we'll get to that aspect of the ride in a sec. But first, this.
An all-new season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Mom Talk has just been blowing up.
Whitney and Jen are on Dancing with the Stars.
Taylor is a bachelorette.
Saying that out loud is crazy. Like, that is huge.
But all the cool opportunities could pull us apart.
It's causing issues in everyone's marriage.
My whole world is falling apart right now. It's chaos.
Watch the Hulu original series, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
And we're back. All right, so again, Len and I are continuing our look at what it was like to work at the Great Movie Ride at Hollywood Studios. And in order to get the chance to play the gangster of the bank robber, you first had to work as a tour guide for a number of months, show that you had a gift for spieling, that you could do what you needed to do with the tram, get it to point, where it needed to be at the times it needed to be. And again, but you had to show you had a gift for performing.
Jim, real quick. The gangster and the bank robber also attempted to collect valuables from the guests. So was petty larceny like an official requirement, or was that just a nice to have for the job application? Like, how did that work out?
Well, what's kind of interesting is, in a weird little bend on the story, Disney stole that from Knott's Berry Farm.
Well, there you go. Apropos.
If you ever rode the train around Knott's Berry Farm, at one point, suddenly there are bandits on the train and they literally walk through and do the same, sort of joking solicitation of your belongings. So, that was a lift from Knott's, folks.
There you go. All right.
On the other hand, if you're the bandit in the, the bank robbery scene, I mean, for example, when that explosion happens, that happens because first of all, you see the person duck behind a piece of equipment, but what you don't see is that they also have what was called an effects enabler, that burst of flame only happens because that, person, okay, everybody's in a safety position. I can now set this off. Bang, good. Now we go on with the scene. So, whereas the gangster had to have sort of hit every beat that he was supposed to do with the character, but also pay ridiculously close attention to the soundtrack, because he had to know the exact moment to turn and shoot the red light out.
Right, the light gets shot out, and I think the go signal appears. Well, you're saying that was timed. That wasn't an actual effect based on a prop they were using. That was timing.
That was timing. He did. That's following the soundtrack. Because remember, there's a scene going on in the room right next door that has to complete, before your ride vehicle can then move into that space.
Wow, that is split second. Okay.
All right. Now, to literally move behind the scenes here, to our right, if you're sitting in that traveling theater car in both the gangster scene and the Old West, just up a set of stairs there is, for lack of a better term, the green room, where, on a typical day, there'd be 3 or 4 sets of gangsters and cowboys, or bank robbers waiting for the right car to come along and come out and work. And of course, what was interesting is this is also where your tour guide went to hang out after they'd been chased off by the bandit or the bank robber. They were just killing time because, at some point they had to walk down a hallway to go to the Temple of Anubis. And then it was, wait till the theater car in front of them disappeared, step out, put on the robe, reset the charred corpse, and then wait for the theater car that they just stepped out of to come around the corner.
Okay, fair.
All right. Now, but here's the thing. Over the course of the history of the Great Movie Ride, it changed. In fact, and some of these changes came about because there were complaints from guests about it being too violent and too scary. Sure. And in fact, and I don't know, I think we talked about in an earlier edition of this series about how there used to be a time where when the employee got shot, in the gangster scene, they would then rip their front pocket off and reveal it was held in by Velcro, but there would be a faux blood stain there.
Oh, I forgot about this. Yeah, that didn't last very long. That effect probably traumatized a lot of people.
Well, and the thing, they also then would dramatically, and fall behind a piece of scenery onto a crash pad.
Yeah, I can see how that would be not great for some guests. Yeah.
Okay, but think about this, Len. There were a number of cast members, who were trained for the Great Movie Ride who were seasonal. So, that they would work the busiest time. They'd work the summer of the holidays, and then they'd go off and have their life. And one particular gentleman, was away when these changes were made.
Didn't get the memo, Jim, is what I'm hearing?
Didn't get the memo.
Oh,
so
okay.
He comes back to work. He's driving a tram, and, here comes the moment where he gets shot. And so, now, mind you, the costumes still have the cover, the Velcro cover. So he tears it off, reveals the bloodstain, and then goes to throw himself behind the scenery onto the crash pad that's always been there. That's now not there.
That's not there.
And depending on...
It's not funny, but it's funny. Go ahead.
Well, depending on who you talk to, he either dislocated his shoulder or broke his elbow. But, it's important to get the memos.
Wow. All right.
Another thing that changed in the Great Movie Ride, people who saw it opening year or thereabouts, remember, the first thing you saw, your introduction to the spectacle of Hollywood as you come under that great neon movie theater marquee. And the first thing you see is the Busby Berkeley scene, where it's a rotating platform with 5 levels of female mannequins dressed in swimsuits, and there's water fountains going off. And
there used to be like bubbles and stuff like that?
Well, no. The bubbles came later, because that was the interesting thing. What was interesting was to watch it sort of slowly go away. I mean, first, the platform stopped spinning because evidently it was a bear to keep spinning. And then, then to hide the fact that the platform was no longer spinning, they put up a scrim. And then they started projecting stills from movie musicals of the 30s onto that thing.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then, somewhere along the line there, again, it's, Len, you live in Central Florida. I have 2 words for you: black mold. All right.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you've got indoor water in Florida, you have to bleach the heck out of it to keep it clean. Even then, that's a losing fight.
There we go. And that's ultimately what happened. At one point, the janitorial came through and told the people in the building, you understand what's going on in the Busby Berkeley scene. And more to the point, you have, tens of thousands of guests going by, this petri dish, every day. Right. And it's like
the slime molds are doing their own musical.
There we go. So that's why, fountains got turned off and soap bubbles. In fact, supposedly the soap bubbles were there to kill the black mold. But anyway, now the team that worked in this building loved this attraction. Just love being there.
Oh, yeah.
They in fact, Len, just want to remind folks, this opened pre 9/11. And so the interesting thing is at break time, a lot of the employees would just get up into the catwalks that ran across the building and explore, and literally would go behind the scenes, which is why, for example, they talked about the gangsters in that roadster that rolled up. If you actually got inside the car, you saw that, the gangsters only existed from the waist up.
Funny.
So,
yeah, all right.
But at the same time, this is a lot of, high schoolers, people in the college program, and they'd go on break up into the catwalks with, their paramour, and, again.
Stuff would happen, yeah.
Stuff would happen.
Kids will be kids.
Kids will be kids. Sure. Which is why, just people loved working at this attraction. And which is why when news broke in early 2017 that Disney was planning on doing something with this building. Word hadn't broken yet about Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but what was known is that Disney had grown tired of paying all of these different companies for the rights for movies and that sort of thing. So they were going to build it around a single IP. But anyway, what ends up happening is that when word gets out that it's going to close in August, and people who had moved on with their lives, who had gotten careers, were suddenly booking trips back to Walt Disney World because they wanted to get into, they wanted one more ride on the ride and get back to
one more thing,
and in fact, especially the weekend the attraction closed, that they were supposedly, there were parties all over property. And in fact, very quietly, wasn't announced. But after hours, if you were a cast member, you could get in one last ride on this thing, especially if you'd worked the attraction. And the weird thing is, even today, Len, that these folks, and we're coming up on a decade of this attraction being closed next year.
Closed, yeah.
But I just want to remind folks that once upon a time there was an organization at Disneyland called the Order of the Red Kerchief. And these were the folks who worked at the Mine Train through Nature's Wonderland, which closed, closed in January of 1977 to make room for the original Big Thunder. But these guys would meet once a year. And in fact, it probably didn't hurt that Ron Dominguez, the then president of Disneyland, that was one of the rides he worked on in the park. So he was a big supporter of the Order of the Red Kerchief.
Always helps to get executive sponsorship.
There we go. So I keep hoping that at some point there will be some sort of great movie ride, cast member, organization, or at very least a reunion. I mean, hell, Circus World did a reunion like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Can you imagine people just doing their own takes on the script? Like somebody does the entire script and somebody does okay, here are the funny things that we used to say about the script. Yeah.
No, that's it exactly. I'd love to get a bunch of these people in a room together and hear their stories about working the. But on the other hand, if you yourself are feeling nostalgic about this attraction, folks, I just want to let you know that if you head on over to YouTube, there is this absolutely amazing video where it's got the full audio for the attraction, but it's all been remastered, restored, and done binaurally. So seriously, this is something you want to listen to with headphones on, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes. But yeah, you want to see the Great Movie Ride and see and hear the Great Movie Ride in all its glory. Check this out online. But
yeah, I listened to I watched the video and I listened to it while I was typing up the show notes when you sent it earlier today, and it's fantastic. I'm using the AirPods too, but I've got the binaural effects on so that when I turn my head, the audio also turns as well, and it's magical, Jim. Everyone should listen to it. Link is in the show notes.
Okay, cool. But there you go, folks. That's a look back at the Great Movie Ride, and thanks so much to the cast members who shared their stories about working at this attraction. And just to be clear here, folks, we only use the family-friendly ones. So
Exactly. So, we'll save the other ones for some other time.
Okay, cool.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over to patreon.com/JimHillMedia. For our latest exclusive show is a look at how Pooh's Honey Hunt in Tokyo Disneyland is the start of the modern trackless ride, and there's a link in the show notes. Friend of the show, Jim Schul, has a YouTube channel called Disney Journey, where he regularly releases videos about the Disney parks produced from his unique perspective as a former Disney Imagineer. His most recent episode, Jim talks about designing a rock and roller coaster, and there's also a link in the show notes. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. Also, check out The Case 4 with Chris Cox, a new podcast where Chris, Jim, and I debate one theme park topic at a time, and you get to vote on who's right. Were produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who'll be warming up the blenders with blood orange, avocado, and habanero lime starting at 9 a.m. for the 2026 Cottleville Margarita Festival, which opens at noon, sure, but it's not day drinking unless you start in the morning, at Frankie Martin's Garden at the intersection of Main and St. Charles Street in beautiful downtown Cottleville, Missouri. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.